I don't rent to filthy black folks. You two don't belong here. Get out before I toss you out with the trash. The sentence crashed into the quiet Sunday morning like a brick through a church window. Benjamin Davis froze where he stood. Freshly pressed suit, polished shoes, Bible still warm in his hand from the morning service. 72 years of dignity and discipline had never prepared him for a stranger spitting venom in his face like this. Dorothy's breath caught in her chest. Her hymn-filled morning shattered. Her fingers tightened around the strap of her purse as tears formed instantly, silently, painfully. The man blocking their way, Vincent Hartley, stood tall with the smug arrogance of someone who believed money granted him the right to crush whoever stood beneath him. Half Benjamin's age, twice as entitled, and utterly convinced the elderly couple in front of him were disposable. "You've lived here too long," he sneered, eyes sweeping their clothes like they carried dirt instead of decades of honest living. "This building is moving up. People like you, well, you're not part of the future." Benjamin drew a slow breath, steadying the storm building inside his chest. He'd endured prejudice before, he'd lived through whole eras built on it. But this moment felt different, sharper, more personal, because what Vincent Hartley didn't know, what he couldn't possibly imagine, was that this gentle, aging couple had an adopted son. And that son wasn't just successful. He was a federal judge. But that revelation lay in the future. For now, there were only the memories that filled apartment 4B, the home where Benjamin and Dorothy had built their life across 23 years of quiet resilience. Every framed photograph, every worn patch of hardwood, every vase, curtain, and plant held a story. Their stories. Stories worth more than any market-rate renovation Vincent fantasized about. The sun fell warm across Benjamin's favorite armchair that morning. The newspaper pages turned slowly beneath his fingers. Dorothy hummed in the kitchen, watering the flowers he bought her for their anniversary. Peace, routine, safety, a life they'd earned. And the man who wanted to rip it all away. This wasn't just an apartment, it was the heart of their history. And Vincent Hartley had no idea who he had just threatened. Because the moment he tried to push them out, he accidentally woke someone far more powerful than he ever imagined. The morning sunlight filtered through the living room as Benjamin adjusted his glasses and scanned the newspaper. An article caught his eye. Bold headline, stark warning. Elderly renters targeted in rising eviction schemes. He paused. Read every line. Landlords fabricating violations. Utility shutoffs used as pressure tactics. Long-time tenants forced out to make room for wealthier replacements. Targeting people who didn't have the strength or resources to fight back. Benjamin exhaled slowly, his chest tightening. Not here, he told himself. Not in Ridgewood Terrace. Not after 23 years of perfect payments and responsible living. Dorothy's voice floated from the kitchen, humming a tune she had sung for nearly half a century. She moved gently between her plants. Bright violets, red geraniums, herbs she used for Sunday dinners. Their home breathed with the warmth she gave it. Everything in this apartment told a story of goodness, steadiness, and love. Benjamin had spent 31 years sorting mail at the post office. The type of man who never called in sick, who stayed late when someone else was struggling, who carried the hardest loads without complaint. His supervisor once called him rock solid. The kind of man America was built on. Dorothy had shaped generations of children through decades of teaching. Her smile made the shyest kids blossom. Parents trusted her without question. They were the very picture of integrity. On their refrigerator hung the photograph they cherished most. A young man in graduation robes, their son Isaiah, arms around them both, smiling like the world had finally made sense. Under the photo, in Dorothy's handwriting, Isaiah, law school graduation, 2001. A lifetime of love in one small frame. Isaiah wasn't theirs by birth, but by choice, by heart, and heart was stronger than blood. Dorothy had spoken to him earlier that day. She always worried about how hard he worked. Judges carried the weight of countless decisions, and Isaiah had always taken the world's burdens onto his shoulders, even as a boy. Benjamin folded his newspaper and tried to settle back into the comfort of the morning. But something felt wrong. The article, the insults, the strange way Vincent had looked at them the day before. A storm was gathering, and the first crack of thunder was only moments away, because when the knock finally came at their door, neither of them was ready for the man standing on the other side. The knock came like a gunshot, sharp, aggressive, completely out of place in the gentle rhythm of their quiet Wednesday morning. Dorothy flinched, nearly spilling the water from her watering can. "Who could that be this early?" she whispered, wiping her hands nervously on her robe. Benjamin pushed himself up from his chair slowly, an uneasy weight forming in his chest. No one ever visited before 9 a.m. Neighbors respected boundaries. Friends called first. Family lived across the city. This was different. Before he reached the door, Dorothy opened it, and instantly wished she hadn't. Standing in the hallway was Vincent Hartley, dressed in expensive slacks and an even more expensive smirk. A clipboard rested in his manicured hand, and his eyes scanned their home over her shoulder like he was already measuring what he would change after they were gone. "Good morning," he said, voice polished like a blade. "We have a routine inspection today. City requirements. Need to check for habitability issues." Dorothy blinked. We didn't receive any notice. Not even a note under the door." Vincent stepped past her without waiting for permission, the way someone walks into a property they believe they already own. "Last-minute scheduling," he said flatly. "I'm sure you understand." But he wasn't inspecting. He was hunting. He opened every cabinet, pulled furniture away from the walls, ran a finger across shelves like a drill sergeant looking for dust. He photographed tiny imperfections with a triumphant grin, as if each one confirmed some secret narrative he'd already written. His gaze landed on the water stain near the ceiling, old, faint, and unchanged since 2018. He snapped 3 photos. "This is a serious violation," he announced. Benjamin stepped forward, voice steady but edged with disbelief. "That stain is from a leak you all never fixed. We reported it 5 times. Vincent didn't even pretend to care. "Well, it's documented now," he said, tapping his clipboard. "Tenant-caused negligence goes on the official record." He walked past the framed photos hanging near the entry, their wedding picture, anniversaries, and the retirement portrait Benjamin cherished. Vincent paused at the retirement photo, smirked and muttered, "Cute, very old-fashioned." That was the moment Dorothy's hands began to tremble. Vincent left without a goodbye, the door closing behind him with a finality that chilled the room. Dorothy clutched Benjamin's arm. "Ben, what is he doing? Why does it feel like—" Benjamin's jaw tightened. "He's building a case, a false one." And both of them knew it had only just begun, because 5 days later Benjamin would open a letter that would nearly break him. 5 days passed in a haze of tension. Dorothy tried to keep her routines alive, church calls, watering plants, humming hymns, but even her gentle spirit felt shaken. Benjamin stayed quiet, always thinking, always watching. Then it happened. Saturday morning. Sunlight pooling through the hallway windows. Benjamin walked to the lobby to check the mail, a ritual he'd done faithfully for 23 years. Electric bill, church newsletter, a flyer for senior discounts at the grocery store. Then, one envelope that didn't belong, white, uncomfortably crisp, gold logo, Hartley Property Management. Benjamin's heart thudded in his chest. He didn't want to open it right there, but his fingers acted before his mind caught up. He unfolded the letter. His breath stopped. The paper seemed to warp in his hands. He blinked, hoping he'd misread it. But the words didn't change. The claims were written neatly, professionally, every sentence crafted with cold intent. Repeated lease violations. Unauthorized occupants. Tenant-caused structural damage. Failure to comply with inspection requirements. Benjamin's vision blurred. Every accusation was a lie. Unauthorized occupants? It had been only the 2 of them since the day they moved in. Property damage. The ceiling leak existed long before they even reported it, and management ignored it for years. Failure to comply. He had let Vincent into his home without the slightest protest. A slow, trembling fury rose inside him, not loud or violent, but deep, old, heavy. He climbed the stairs with the letter in hand, each step harder than the last. When he opened the apartment door, Dorothy looked up from the stove with a smile that disappeared the moment she saw his face. "Ben, what happened?" He handed her the letter. Dorothy read it once, then again. Her spatula slipped from her fingers and clattered to the tile floor. Her voice cracked. "Unauthorized occupants. We've lived alone here for decades." Benjamin nodded. "I know." "And damage?" "Ben, we begged them to fix that ceiling." "I know." Dorothy sank into a chair, tears running freely down her cheeks. Can he do this? Can he just make things up and push us out? Benjamin sat beside her and took her hands, his own shaking. He's trying. Silence filled the kitchen, thick, heavy, heartbreaking. But Benjamin wasn't defeated. Not yet. Because within 1 hour, Benjamin was standing in Vincent's office. And the conversation that followed would change everything. The property management office was a place Benjamin had never needed to visit in nearly 23 years. Bills paid on time, no complaints, no disputes, just 2 elderly tenants living quietly and respectfully. But today, he walked through those glass doors with the weight of betrayal pressing down on his shoulders. Inside, the receptionist, Donna, looked up from her desk. Her face drained of color when she saw him holding the letter. "Mr. Davis, I'm so sorry you're dealing with—" "I need to speak to your boss," Benjamin said, his tone calm but firm. "Right now." Donna swallowed hard. He's in a meeting. I'm not sure." Before she could finish, Vincent's office door swung open, and out walked the man himself. Confident, polished, sipping an expensive coffee as if the world existed for his convenience alone. When he glanced up and saw Benjamin, a slow smile curled across his lips, a smile that said he already knew exactly why Benjamin was there. Well, Vincent said, stepping forward. "Here to discuss your move-out timeline. I appreciate your cooperation." Benjamin held up the letter, his voice steady as stone. "This notice is full of lies, fabricated accusations. You know it, and I know it." Vincent took a casual sip of his coffee. The inspection results speak for themselves. "There were no violations," Benjamin replied. "None. You staged that entire visit to justify this. Tell the truth." Vincent's smile thinned, revealing the sharpness beneath. "Mr. Davis, let's be clear," he said, stepping closer, voice dropping into a cruel whisper only Benjamin could hear. "You've lived here long enough. This building is changing, and you and your wife simply don't match the kind of tenants we want now." Benjamin stared at him, searching his face for even a glimmer of humanity. There was none. Vincent leaned in further. "Frankly, the demographic I'm targeting doesn't include people like you." The word demographic hung in the air like poison. Benjamin's jaw tightened. His voice remained calm, too calm. "You mean people who look like me?" Vincent didn't flinch, didn't deny it. He simply smirked, as if he enjoyed hearing Benjamin say it aloud. Donna remained frozen behind her desk, eyes wide, knuckles white. She looked like she wanted to disappear. Benjamin stepped back, breathing slowly, controlling the storm inside him. He refused to let rage turn him into the version of the man across from him. "This isn't over," Benjamin said quietly. "Not even close." He turned and walked out, not defeated but ignited. Because when Benjamin finally made that phone call, the man who answered would turn this entire story upside down. Back inside the apartment, Dorothy sat at the kitchen table with her hands folded tightly, as if she were trying to hold herself together. The eviction notice lay between them like a loaded weapon. Benjamin placed his phone gently on the table. He'd been avoiding what he knew he needed to do, avoiding it out of pride, out of habit, out of years of wanting to protect his son from unnecessary worry. But Dorothy lifted her head, tears streaking her cheeks. "Benjamin, call Isaiah." Her voice trembled, but there was strength in it too. A desperate, pleading strength he'd only heard a handful of times in their 47 years together. Benjamin hesitated. Not because he didn't want help, because asking for help from the boy he once carried through nightmares felt like crossing a line he'd promised never to burden him with. But this wasn't a broken car. This wasn't a hospital bill. This wasn't a financial struggle they could quietly shoulder. This was their home, their history, their dignity. Benjamin picked up his phone. His thumb tapped Isaiah's contact before he even realized it. The phone rang once, twice, then a familiar voice answered. "Hey, Pop," Isaiah said warmly. "Everything okay?" Benjamin closed his eyes, steadying himself. "Son, we've got a problem. A serious one." Isaiah's tone shifted instantly, from warm son to alert protector. "What happened?" Benjamin explained everything. Slowly, carefully, every insult, every lie, every threat, every bruise to their dignity, Dorothy's tears, Vincent's smirk. The falsified notice now lying on the table like a scar. When Benjamin finished, the line went silent, for a long moment. Then Isaiah spoke, voice low and controlled, the kind of controlled that carried power. "I'm coming there," he said, "right now." "Isaiah, you don't have to—" "I'm on my way," Isaiah cut in. "Canceling my docket for the week. Tell Mom I love her. I'll be there shortly." Benjamin tried to argue. "You've got responsibilities, a courtroom, important cases." "You and Mom are more important than every case in this country," Isaiah said. "Text me your building number. I'm leaving now." He hung up before Benjamin could protest again. Benjamin placed the phone down, breathing deeply. Dorothy lifted her face, eyes wet but glowing with hope. "What did he say?" Benjamin took her hands. "He said he's coming. And Dorothy, he's not coming as our son." He paused, letting the moment sink in. "He's coming as a federal judge." Dorothy covered her mouth with trembling hands, relief and pride crashing through her like a storm breaking open. Because when Isaiah arrived, the entire building would feel the shift in day 12. A quiet afternoon sunlight poured across the lobby floor as Benjamin and Dorothy returned from their weekly grocery run. 2 bags each, filled with simple things they'd bought together for decades. Bread, fresh vegetables, coffee, familiar comforts. But as soon as they stepped through the entrance, they felt the tension. Vincent Hartley stood in the center of the lobby like he owned the entire universe. And beside him, a young, wealthy couple. Designer clothes, expensive jewelry, the kind of people who'd never once worried about rent or eviction. Vincent's voice rose theatrically the moment he noticed the elderly couple walking in. "As I was saying," he announced loudly, gesturing toward the newly renovated lobby, "we're transforming this building. Premium upgrades, premium community, premium tenants." His eyes slid toward Benjamin and Dorothy with cold intent. "Some older residents from the previous era are still lingering, but they'll be gone soon. Very soon." The young couple shifted uncomfortably, clearly embarrassed, but they said nothing. Dorothy felt the sting instantly. She lowered her eyes, her cheeks burning. She wasn't a woman who embarrassed easily, not after decades of teaching children and guiding families. But this humiliation hit a place inside her she thought she'd long outgrown. Benjamin set his grocery bags down slowly and faced Vincent with quiet defiance. "If you have something to say to us," Benjamin said, voice steady, "say it to our faces, not like we're ghosts." Vincent laughed, mocking, loud, forcing the wealthy couple to witness the performance. "Mr. Davis, this is a private conversation between me and potential tenants. You're interrupting." Dorothy stepped forward, voice quivering not from fear, but from a fury she could no longer contain. "My husband worked 40 years to provide an honest life for our family," she said with a trembling strength. "He has more character in his little finger than you have in your entire body." Benjamin looked at her like he was seeing the bravest person he'd ever known. Vincent's smirk faltered, just slightly, as the young couple exchanged uneasy looks. "We'll, think about it," the woman said awkwardly, pulling her partner toward the exit. They left without signing a single form. A tiny victory, but it tasted powerful. Benjamin picked up the grocery bags and held his head high. Dorothy slipped her arm through his. They walked toward the elevator with the dignity Vincent could never steal from them. But they both felt it now, unmistakably. They were in a war they hadn't asked for, and the landlord was about to unleash the worst blow yet, because humiliation was only the beginning. The days that followed were like drip torture, slow, intentional, designed to break their spirit one drop at a time. Day 18 brought a letter slipped under their door. A false noise complaint, supposedly submitted by a neighbor who later swore they never filed such a thing. Day 22 came with a sudden water shutoff for 6 long hours, forcing Dorothy to boil bottled water on the stove just to make oatmeal. When Benjamin threatened to call the city utilities department, the water mysteriously returned minutes later. Day 26 arrived with another inspection, this time with 2 strangers Vincent sent into their home. They wore cold expressions, touched personal belongings without asking, took photos of everything from the bookshelf to the plants, acting like detectives searching for hidden wrongdoing. Then came the whisper. During that final inspection, Vincent leaned in close to Benjamin, close enough that the scent of his overpriced cologne mixed with the bitterness in his voice. His whisper was soft enough for no one else to hear, yet sharp enough to cut through bone. "Let me tell you the truth, old man," he murmured. "No one cares about 2 elderly black renters in a subsidized unit. You're invisible, you're powerless, nobody will help you. Nobody even knows you exist." Benjamin didn't flinch, didn't respond, didn't blink. But something inside him cracked. Not his strength, not his pride, but the quiet belief that the world still played fair when a man lived honestly. That night, Dorothy sat in her favorite chair, clutching the framed photograph from the refrigerator. Isaiah in his graduation gown, smiling with a joy only love could build. She started crying. Not the soft tears of frustration, but the deep, soul-breaking sobs of someone who'd been pushed beyond human limits. "We did everything right," she cried. "Every bill, every rule, every kindness. Why is this happening to us, Benjamin? Why?" Benjamin knelt painfully beside her chair, taking both her trembling hands into his. "We didn't do a single thing wrong," he said softly. "Some people mistake cruelty for strength. Some people think power means they can take whatever they want." He squeezed her hands tighter. "But he's wrong, Dorothy. And he's going to learn how wrong, very, very soon." Her tears slowed. Her breathing steadied. Benjamin stood, walked to the counter, picked up the phone, and stared at Isaiah's name glowing on the screen. He had never asked his son for help before, not once, not ever. But tonight he pressed call, because the moment Isaiah picked up the phone, their fight stopped being one-sided. Day 29. 10:48 a.m. The parking lot of Ridgewood Terrace had never seen a vehicle like the one that arrived that morning. A long, black Lincoln with deep-tinted windows that reflected the sky like a mirror. The engine hummed low, powerful, controlled. The driver stepped out first, tall, formal, professional, moving with the steady confidence of someone trained to protect something valuable. He walked to the rear passenger door, opened it with deliberate precision. And then the real shift in the story began. Isaiah Davis stepped out of the car, tall, composed. A presence sharp enough to silence a room without speaking a word. His charcoal suit, crisp, tailored to perfection. His polished shoes reflecting the sunlight. His expression calm, but underneath, a fire burned hot and focused. He was no longer the frightened child who once hid in corners. He was not the lost boy the system tried to forget. He was a federal judge. And the moment his foot touched the pavement, the entire energy of the building seemed to tilt. 2 men followed behind him, one carrying a thick briefcase filled with documents, the other holding a folder stuffed with files. Their movements were efficient, purposeful, not visitors, not family, professionals on assignment. Isaiah paused at the base of the building and looked up. This was the same place where he grew up, where he learned kindness from Dorothy, where he learned character from Benjamin, where he learned what love meant, because 2 people chose him when no one else would. His jaw tightened. This building held the history of everything that saved him. And someone had tried to rip that away from the very people who gave him a life. When he reached Vincent's office, he didn't knock. He didn't need to. The door opened for him. Vincent stepped forward, annoyed, prepared to dismiss another tenant. But then he actually saw the man in front of him, the suit, the posture, the fire behind the eyes, and his smirk wavered. Can I help you? Vincent asked, voice cracking slightly. Isaiah didn't answer with small talk. He didn't explain. He stepped closer, unblinking. My name is Isaiah Davis, he said. United States District Judge, Northern District of Georgia. The color drained from Vincent's face. And I'm here about the unlawful harassment and falsified eviction attempt against my parents. The lobby fell silent, and the temperature in the room dropped. This was no longer landlord versus tenant. This was justice arriving in person, because the documents Isaiah carried would destroy every lie Vincent had built. The confrontation that followed was not loud. It didn't need to be. The quiet power in Isaiah's voice carried more force than any shouting match ever could. Vincent stepped backward instinctively, like prey sensing the presence of a predator he underestimated. Isaiah opened the manila folder in his hand and laid out document after document onto the receptionist's desk. Evidence collected, printed, organized with surgical precision. Here, Isaiah said, are recorded statements from 6 former tenants you forced out using the same tactics. Vincent's lips parted in shock. All elderly, all long-term residents, all black. He placed another file down. Here are photos confirming maintenance issues that were never addressed, issues you later falsified as tenant-caused damage. Vincent swallowed hard. Another file. Here are time-stamped records proving the so-called inspection notice was never delivered. Another. And here is evidence of illegal utility shutoffs used as intimidation, all of which violate both state law and the Fair Housing Act. Mona, the receptionist, sat frozen, tears welling in her eyes as she watched every piece of truth land in front of the man who had ordered her to stay silent. Isaiah stepped closer, his voice dropping to a low, cold register. You told my father that nobody cared about what happened to 2 elderly black renters. Vincent's knees almost buckled. Isaiah leaned in. You were wrong. 2 FBI agents entered the lobby at that exact moment, their jackets clearly marked. The room filled with whispers. Residents peeked from the hallway. A couple nearby slipped out of the elevator and froze mid-step. Mr. Hartley, the lead agent said, you're being taken into custody for federal housing discrimination, falsification of legal documents, and multiple civil rights violations. Vincent stammered. Wait, I can fix this. I'll drop the eviction. I'll apologize. Tell them it was a misunderstanding. Isaiah's face remained still, unmoved, unmerciful. You had 30 days to fix it, he said. You chose cruelty instead. Vincent's coffee cup slipped from his trembling hand, shattering across the tile floor. The agents cuffed him in front of the entire building. Residents cheered. Some cried. Donna covered her mouth, overcome with relief and shame and gratitude all at once. Isaiah watched calmly as the man was led out the door. Not with vengeance, but with purpose. The purpose Benjamin and Dorothy had instilled in him since childhood. Justice is not requested, it is claimed. But the story wasn't over, because consequences don't end with handcuffs. They echo through lives long after. The lobby erupted the moment Vincent was taken away. Neighbors, some of them victims of the same cruelty, gathered around Benjamin and Dorothy. Mrs. Patterson hugged Dorothy so tightly that neither of them could breathe for a moment. Mr. Coleman wiped tears from his eyes, whispering, It's about time somebody stopped that man. A reporter, who had slipped in during the commotion, approached Benjamin with a microphone. Mr. Davis, how does it feel knowing your son helped bring your landlord to justice? Benjamin thought for a long moment. His answer was soft, steady, and full of the humility that shaped his entire life. I'm proud of my son, he said. But I'm even prouder of the man he became. We raised him to stand up for those who can't fight for themselves. And today, he stood up for us. The crowd applauded. Isaiah walked through them with calm authority. He wore the same look he'd always had when he defended the defenseless, focused, protective, unshakable. Pop, he said. Are you all right? Benjamin nodded. I'm all right, son. Now I'm all right. Dorothy wiped her eyes and wrapped both arms around her son. You came for us, she whispered, just like you always did, even when you were small. Isaiah closed his eyes as if grounding himself in her embrace. "I'll always come for you, Mama. Always." 3 weeks later, life in Ridgewood Terrace settled back into something resembling peace. Under new management, a nonprofit dedicated to protecting longtime tenants, the building felt different, warmer, safer. Maintenance requests were answered within days, leaks were fixed, lights repaired, and for the first time in years, the lobby walls held photos of the actual community. Smiling residents, including the Davises, placed proudly at the center. One morning, a soft knock came at the Davis apartment. Dorothy opened the door and found Donna, Vincent's former assistant, standing nervously in the hallway, hands clasped, eyes downcast. I'm sorry to bother you," Donna said, voice trembling. "I just needed to apologize in person." Dorothy let her inside without hesitation. Donna sat at the edge of their sofa, tears already building. "I knew what he was doing was wrong. I knew. But I kept quiet because I was scared, of losing my job, of him retaliating, and my silence. It hurt you." She covered her face, crying. "I'm so sorry." Benjamin lowered his newspaper. "You're here now. That takes courage." "And you testified," Dorothy added softly, taking the young woman's hand, "when it mattered most." Donna looked up, surprised by the grace they offered so easily. "I'll spend the rest of my life making sure this never happens to anyone else," Donna said. "I promise." And she kept that promise. But there was still one more chapter to write. One that began not with conflict, but with family. 3 months later, the Davis home radiated peace again. The morning light fell across Benjamin's favorite reading chair. Dorothy hummed softly in the kitchen, watering the plants that had survived every storm. The scent of coffee drifted through the air. It felt like home again. Truly home. Benjamin unfolded the newspaper and smiled at the headline, "Hartley Properties ordered to pay $2.3 million in landmark housing discrimination judgment." He read it twice, not out of disbelief, but out of satisfaction. Justice had not only arrived, it had echoed. A few hours later, the Davis apartment filled with the warm chaos of Sunday dinner. The dining table overflowed with food, crispy fried chicken, steaming collard greens, mac and cheese with the perfect golden top, fresh biscuits, sweet potato pie cooling on the counter. Isaiah sat across from his parents, his wife Angela beside him, and their children, Maya and James, chattering excitedly. During dinner, Maya looked at her grandfather with wide, admiring eyes. "Grandpa," she said, "my teacher said you were on the news because you stood up to a bad man. Is it true?" Benjamin smiled, glancing at Isaiah, then back at her. "I just told the truth, sweetheart. The real hero is your father." Isaiah shook his head immediately. "No, Pop. Everything I know about justice. Everything I know about being a good man. I learned from you and Mama." His voice softened. "Before you adopted me, nobody believed in me. But you did. You gave me a home. You taught me what love looks like. That's why I fight the way I do." Dorothy reached for her son's hand, tears of gratitude in her eyes. After dinner, the whole family sat on the small balcony. The same balcony where Benjamin and Dorothy had watched sunsets together for 2 decades. The sky blazed orange, pink, and purple. Dorothy leaned her head on Benjamin's shoulder. "Do you think things will ever change, Benjamin, for people like us?" Benjamin watched the sky shift, thoughtful. "I don't know if the world will change as fast as it should," he said. "But I know this. We're still here, in our home. And the man who tried to take it from us, he's not." Dorothy smiled softly. "That's something worth celebrating." "It is," he whispered. "It truly is." They sat in silence, holding hands, watching the city breathe around them. They had survived the storm, and their family, stronger than ever, would carry that victory forward. But the legacy of what they built, that was only just beginning. 4 years passed after the storm that changed everything. Benjamin Davis lived those years fully, gratefully, peacefully, in the same apartment he'd built a life in, surrounded by the love he'd earned through decades of quiet goodness. And then, one gentle spring morning, with sunlight streaming across his favorite chair, Benjamin took his last breath while holding Dorothy's hand. He passed the way he lived, softly, honorably, wrapped in love. The weeks that followed were filled with memories, laughter, tears, stories retold 100 times and still somehow not enough. The building neighbors brought food. Church members visited daily. Isaiah held his mother's hand every night, making sure she was never alone. And even through the grief, something beautiful unfolded. Dorothy remained in the same apartment. The management, now a community-driven non-profit, insisted she stay at the exact rent she had always paid. Not out of charity, out of respect. The lobby now carried a framed tribute to Benjamin Davis, placed beside the community photo wall. In honor of a life lived with courage and grace. Benjamin Davis, 1947-2024. Residents paused in front of it often. Some left flowers, some left handwritten notes, some left simple thank yous. One note stood out among them, written in careful script. "You taught me to be brave. I owe my career to you. Donna." Yes, Donna, the once frightened assistant, now worked for the Atlanta Housing Authority. Her job, protecting tenants from exactly the kind of abuse the Davises endured. She visited Dorothy often, checking in, carrying groceries, fixing small things around the apartment that others missed. Sometimes redemption grows silently in the places brokenness once lived. Every year, on the anniversary of Vincent's arrest, Isaiah brought his family to visit Dorothy. Flowers, dinner. Laughter mingled with memories, a ritual of honor. On one of those evenings, as the sun set in brilliant colors across the skyline, Maya asked a question that struck everyone silent. "Grandma," she whispered, "do you think Grandpa knows we're still all together?" Dorothy took her granddaughter's small hand and smiled, a soft, gentle smile that carried decades of faith. "He knows, sweetheart," she said. "Love like ours doesn't disappear. It carries forward. It always will." Because what happened next proved Benjamin's legacy didn't just survive. It grew. The years continued on, and the Davis family remained a pillar in their community. Not because they were wealthy or powerful or influential, but because they had become living proof that dignity, when protected fiercely enough, can change lives beyond their own. Dorothy eventually grew older, her steps slower, her hair silver like moonlight. Yet she remained in apartment 4B, her sanctuary, her history, her home, with neighbors, friends, and family surrounding her. Every time Isaiah visited, he brought flowers and a story about a case where he'd stood up for someone who thought they had no voice. He always ended those stories with the same line, "Pop would have wanted this." And he was right. Because the lesson Benjamin left behind wasn't about revenge or winning or punishment. It was about this. Justice is built by ordinary people who refuse to accept injustice. One moment, one voice, one stand at a time. The Davis family had stood. And the world around them shifted, even if just a little. That shift matters. It mattered for the neighbors who no longer lived in fear. It mattered for Donna, who rebuilt her life in service to others. It mattered for Isaiah's children, who now understood what courage looked like. And it mattered for everyone who heard their story and realized, you don't need power to fight back, you just need truth, and the courage to speak it. Now, the story of Benjamin and Dorothy Davis isn't just a memory, it's a reminder. A reminder that even the smallest voice can echo across a system designed to stay silent. A reminder that no one, no matter their age, race, or income, deserves to be treated like they don't matter. A reminder that one family can change everything. And somewhere, right now, another Benjamin and another Dorothy are facing their own battle. And they need to know they are not powerless, they are not invisible, and they are not alone. If this story moved you, don't let it end here. Share it, comment your thoughts, and most importantly, stand with anyone who faces injustice. Your voice could be the one that changes everything for someone else. Tap like, hit subscribe, and share this message with someone who needs hope today. Justice isn't handed out, it's built. Let's build it together. And if you're ready for another powerful story, watch next. Black student missed an exam to help a billionaire's wife. Then a helicopter landed in her yard. Click now. You won't believe what happened next.